Um, Today we'll be dealing with Unit 7. In the last class, we dealt with Unit 6, which focused on integrative governance. So that unit was very important because that was the foundation of us trying to understand the importance of governance, especially within the South African context, because at the end of the day, you want a government that is able to govern itself within the parameters of its promised legislative frameworks and policies so that they can drive the vehicle of delivering services within the expectation of the citizens and business people and so forth. So when you look at Unit 6, you find that we dealt with terms like governance, which refer to a set of institutions. Remember, we talked about Chapter 9 institutions and actors that are drawn from, but also beyond the government, meaning that we get to understand, or we got to understand, that governance is bigger than the government because it challenges the authority of the state or of the government in the traditional sense and maintains that the government is not the only power center, meaning it is not the only institution that can ensure good governance because you need to provide or include other external institutions or external actors to actually be able to hold the government accountable. And we gave a lot of examples and so forth just to understand what integrative governance is all about. And I remember going back to the word integrative coming from the word integrity, or to integrate, to become one, or to make one, meaning that you get all these other institutions, elements, aspect that can help you achieve what we call good governance or collaborative governance, because that was the goal of that unit. So in this unit, which is Unit 7, we're looking at communication efficacy and production of service delivery results. The reason why communication efficacy is that everything that the government does must communicate or must be communicated through its channels so that it can reach the people it's supposed to reach: your citizens, your public, your institutions, or your non-governmental organizations or not-for-profit public organizations, where you get to understand why at the end of the day do you have a government, why do you need service delivery and so forth. Because I remember telling you in one of our classes that the government does not have money. The money that they have is people's money, because the money that they have is drawn from taxes, business income, you know, income tax and so forth. So all the monies that the government have belongs to the people. Just that there's a process of getting or accessing that money and how that money is supposed to be allocated. And in most cases, when we talk about money, we don't necessarily talk about the paper. We're talking about the resources that the government has. We can talk about all kinds of things, but money, in terms of financial resources, plays a critical role, because you can have all the people, you can have the talent, the skills, and everything, but at the end of the day, when you don't have the financial means to execute that which you have set as a government, it becomes impossible. In other words, without financial means, your development or your action can be hindered to a point that you might not be able to reach certain goals because they require that financial means are being used in the process. So here in in Unit 6, as we passed, we are going to focus on the importance of communication. Why communication? Communication is the lifeblood of any institution. In fact, most important in the sense of the government, because it is the lifeblood of the government, is the lifeboat, or is the heartbeat of the government to communicate what they want versus what they don't want. In most cases, this is how communication becomes critical, because It begins with communication, how you want decisions to be made, what decisions to make, what decisions to avoid. And also, it also helps you to understand the direction of that government department. For example, talking about the Department of Basic Education. For the Department of Basic Education to become effective in delivering services, which is basic education, what they need to do is that they must communicate their strategies and policies and plans effectively to everyone involved through multiple channels that they have, because you want to make sure that the plan that they want to achieve or implement, it must begin with the um, executive authorities, whereby they're the ones that will tell you what they want. Remember, I will say that the Minister of Basic Education is the political head. She's the one that provide political guidance to the administrators, referring to your director general, your HODs, directors, chief directors, and all the other administrators that form the chain or the structure of the basic education department. So our goal is to understand, how does education in its effective form help produce the best results? So we're going to look at some of the learning units so that you get to understand the importance of these results. So by the end of this unit, you should be able to define key concept. This one is very important because we always want to make sure that concepts are understood and clearly articulated, because that's what's going to help us understand the importance of the unit. Again, you must be able to explain the role of communication within an organization, identify and explain the types of communication in an organization, identify and explaining the barriers to effective communication towards service delivery. Because these four outcomes, what intrigues me is that it's all about communication, but there are some components or aspects that you need to understand first before you can actually understand the importance or the role of communication. Because in most cases, you find that the issue does not begin with communication itself, is people not understanding the role of communication. One of the frustrating things is that having an employee that is new within an organization and they don't communicate with you, what is it that you're supposed to do? They don't tell you um how you're supposed to do things, and then they do that for a week. Probably you'll be frustrated for that week. In fact, you might even be unsure of your role anymore, because if they just leave you in your office and say you know your job, you can do whatever you think is okay, then something's wrong, because they must give you as some sort of a blueprint of, this is how we perform, this is how we do things. The only thing that you can do is when you see that a particular role maybe does not match with your expertise, or maybe you think it can be improved, because you're bringing in innovation and new way of thinking within that role to make it better. So these are some of the definitions, which is the foundation of this unit, because you need to understand what is communication, because sometimes we feel like we know communication until you have to define it. So communication in simple terms, simply refers to the process of creating meaning as a way of ascribing it. So one thing that you understand is that a meaning of something cannot just be understood until it is explained or created or ascribed in a process that helps you understand why that sort of communication needs to be understood. Meaning, the first line here actually says that any communication must have a purpose of why is to be communicated. So, and again, here it is the exchange of ideas. Ideas is what you have in your head. These are some of the things that you want to see happen, want to see implemented, but I will not know your ideas until you begin to tell me what they are. And when you begin to tell me your ideas, then I know what you're thinking. Other way, or in other words, ideas are your thoughts. What is it that you are thinking about concerning your role? Then they become ideas as you're busy telling me. And then as you're busy articulating your ideas, changing, what happens is we are interacting. That's why it says interaction among um, group members. So communication in the public service is defined as a transfer of information. That information we're talking about is the ideas that the government wants or the department wants between the government and the people, or rather citizens. So this is what happens. But in most cases, we've seen that there's been a problem, a massive problem when it comes to communication between the people and the government. In most cases, we just see things being done. We don't know which platform they use to communicate, because there's a difference between communicating via a TV station, a radio station, and actually going to communicate with people in actual form, in physical format, whereby you meet with the people, you interview people, you make time for the people to communicate with. Because sometimes there's a tendency that when people are in public offices, now they don't have time for the people and they are working for the people. That's one thing that causes a lot of service delivery protests, because they become so imbued with the ideas of being caught up with office work and other political stuff without coming back and communicating with the public. So those are some of the things that may cause issues. So service delivery is the government's key task. It can be regarded as the government program wherein projects are designed and implemented in communities by government institutions to improve the lives of the people. Now, it might seem like something that the government is doing a favor to the people, but it's not. It is what it's supposed to do. That is why a government is elected for 5 years. And then after 5 years, if they don't get what they want, the people have the power to remove them through the voting process, which is going to happen on the 29th of May 2024. So if you're not happy with your current government, you can vote otherwise and try another political party that will be in power. So we're not going to talk about politics anyway. I'm just giving an example. So we begin by saying that the origin of communication comes from the Latin language, which means communis. So communis is the general view of the foundation of communication. So here, communist simply means the interaction within a social context, meaning that, like I said before, the definition there where it says it is the exchange of ideas and interaction amongst groups. What some normally means is that people always have thoughts. That is why there must be a meeting every now and then within any department, because people have ideas, but they don't know how to voice them out. And it's a problem when there's no platform to do so. This creates the source of frustration, and the people that's supposed to receive such information are also affected. Or maybe you are not even made aware of what's happening within your department. You just hear rumors that things are like this, things will be like this. And then the communication is power, because sometimes when you're in a position and you just hear that things were being received and you're not told, it makes you feel like you do not belong to that institution. Your essence of being there is not, it's like you're not a person of significance, like you do not matter. So it can actually undermine you, or it can make you feel like you're being undermined and you're not taken seriously. So because imagine if an HOD comes to you, or one of the the executives comes to you and sit you down and say, you know what, this is what happening. There's one that needs to be, there's two that needs this, there's three that needs to be. You feel so welcome. You feel like these people really, really care about me, even though they don't in social terms, but in terms of work, they show you that they're very communicate committed in terms of um, making sure that everyone is in the light. So that's how important it is. So effective communication in a workplace plays a prominent role. That's the point that I'm trying to drive home. So it improves service delivery and relationship between not just citizens and the government, but within the government department, within the employees, because if the employees themselves do not communicate, there will be frustration. Imagine Office 1 and Office 2 do not communicate of what they're supposed to do. And then they're given the same task. Instead of just collaborating and saving funds and saving time, the other one is doing whatever it is they're doing, the other one is doing, or maybe they're supposed to go to a certain conference and they do not know that they can use the same transportation, the same hotels, they can use the same thing, or they can just use one person or delegate one person or send one person to go and attend such an event, but they book and use the money and all this, only to find out that they meet at the same place and they did not know that they're supposed to go there. But those are some of the things that happen within organizations that do not communicate. So it's very, very important that you communicate. So in most cases, people will be like, communication must also come with understanding. You must comprehend what is it that the people are trying to communicate so that you know what to do. One of the best thing within work or within the workspace is knowing the times and knowing what to do through effective communication, because once communication is lost, you are lost as well. So there's a role of communication in strengthening service delivery. I think I've already covered this, how important it is when we talk about the role of communication in strengthening service delivery. So this is one of those subtopic where it says internal communication plays a critical role by ensuring that information is made available to employees. Like I was saying, that first, it's not about citizens and the government. It must begin within the organization itself, whereby they know what to do so that even when they give information to the citizens, they speak with one voice. One thing that can frustrate the people is coming from one department but speaking different languages, meaning that the citizens will be confused as to who's telling the truth and who's telling not the truth. So it's a very, very complex situation there. More like within the political party where a member of the ANC says one thing and a member of the ANC says one thing. I remember there was a case whereby the Minister of Electricity was saying something different and the president was promising something different. The president was saying that there will never be load shedding because they've employed or they have appointed someone that has deep knowledge with technology and electricity and all these things going to solve the problem. And then now there's another video where the minister of electricity is busy saying that he does not know what's happening. He's not a civil engineer. And then it gives you that miscommunication. Did they understand each other? Is the president lying to us or is the minister lying to us? Which one is telling the truth? So those are some of the things that can help us misinterpret what the government is trying to improve. And that can also lead to service delivery protests because they can go against and say the president promised that there will never be load shedding. Why is there load shedding? They're trying to sabotage the country and our businesses. So those are some of the things that you need to understand. So there are types of communication within an organization. We're talking about formal, informal, interpersonal communication. Like, for example, interpersonal communication is the communication between people, between institutions, between governments. So it's something that is in between. So very, very important. Verbal, diagonal, oral communication, written communication. So these are some of the things that you can go through your study guide and understand what they are. For example, verbal communication is the use of words to share information with other people. So you use words to share what you're thinking. It is some sort of information. So the verbal element of communication is all about the words that you choose and how they are heard and interpreted. This includes sounds, words, language, and speaking. In other words, you must speak like two, like the way you communicate with someone is different from the way you communicate with others. Sometimes you might use sound to say that you need something. Sometimes you can just use words to mean other things, depending on how you guys know each other or how best you know each other. So again, when you talk about written communication, though, so this is any written message that two or more people exchange. So written communication is typically more formal but less efficient than oral communication. In other words, when you talk about oral communication, this is where you begin to communicate in terms of oral presentations, giving your views and trying to present your thoughts to the people that really need to hear what you're saying. So those are some of the things that the people need to hear the government telling us what are their thoughts in terms of solving issues of a specific service delivery. In this case, it can just be education or it can just be electricity, whatever it might be that the people need. So there are mechanisms applied in terms of enhancing service delivery. So service delivery is the execution of those services and making sure that they reach those people and places to whom and which they are intended. In other words, the goal here is to make sure that the people get the services or the service delivery that they were promised, and that and the services or the kind of services that they are entitled to. Very important, because in most cases you find that the government is no longer acting in favor or in the best interest of the people, because they also want to deal with their own personal means, which hinders them to focus on what the people needs. Remember, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa in Chapter 2 details or give us much more or stipulates the Bill of Rights to all citizens. So those are some of the rights that you do have: the rights to education, the right to potable water, clean water, and all these things. You have to receive those from the government because they are working for us, the public. So effective accountability is also another mechanism which can control the state of or the state resources, how the government chooses to use the resources to improve or to enhance service delivery, and also to set up clear and update control structures. It's another essential tool towards service delivery, especially within municipalities. So what I'm trying to say there is that you need to have a means of holding the government accountable for not delivering on the services they're supposed to deliver. And to do that, you need effective communication tools to approach them, because you as an individual, you cannot just go to the president and approach them. There must be a means. Maybe you need an advocate or a lawyer or institution or a political party that can speak for you, or a group of some sort that can actually set up a meeting and meet with the president to actually move on with the matter of the day. So they are components of effective service delivery, but this is to be understood across all government sectors. So effective service delivery is making sure that the standard of execution of services meet the customer's satisfaction, because at the end of the day is to satisfy those that's supposed to receive services from the government. So service delivery takes place at an interface of human relation, meaning that it begins with the employees or the public servant that works within that government department to understand their role first and what is it that they're supposed to achieve at the end of the day. So service delivery is to be delivered effectively. So there are 5 components to effective service delivery. First one, you must build and maintain relationships, not just within the organization, but even outside the organization. Manage expectation. Of course, the expectation has to be that of the employees and the citizens and the external uh, customers. So again, handling and resolving conflict, you need to do that as well within the organization. Resolved, and handle, address, and resolve complaints within your organization, so that you are able to have a very, very healthy workforce that can also do the same for the citizens outside there. Time service delivery, meaning that there must be a time frame as when certain services are to be um, delivered, and that will stop the frustration of the citizens, because once you tell them that at this day or at this time certain services will be provided, make sure it is provided. Continue improvements. One thing that has been noticed within the government department is that some of the most um or let me just say most government department are still rendering services the same way they used to do it 10 years ago. And that's very frustrating looking at the issue of digital technologies today. You find that they still use paper or manual paper-based system to render services, that you have to go to their building to receive something that they can just offer online to reduce the trips and the transportation costs that it's incurred by the citizens. Very, very important, because you need to also check the time. What is it? Which time are we at? So that you invest in the proper systems that can actually improve the way people receive services. So the barriers to communication, physical barriers, cultural barriers, linguistic, interpersonal and organizational barriers. So this can actually hinder communication, because sometimes there are people that cannot attend meetings because of their physical disability, or maybe it could also be about the place that such meetings are being held are not accessible to them. So you can introduce digital means to deal with that. Linguistic, you might find that maybe someone is going to present in Afrikaans and there's some people that do not understand Afrikaans. So you need to have a translator that can actually help you understand that. Cultural, it might be a culture that people present in a form of their cultural means, but others might not understand that. Their language, their body language, it might mean something different. Maybe it might even insult someone from a different culture. So you need to understand the cultures that will be there to understand how to communicate effective. Organizational, any organization has its own culture as well, how they deal with things. You need to understand the interpersonal relationships, the relationship between people. Very, very important to understand, because that is also one of those barriers where you need to understand what is it that can actually improve um, interpersonal relationship within the organization. And those are some of the things that we need to understand, how communication can be hindered, or how the barriers can hinder effective communication. So there are platforms within the local government that can be used to improve effective communication. We're talking about technology and the media. So new technology has greatly increased over the past years, and it has given us choices for communication. You have your social media, we have your smartphones, you have all kinds of things. So these platforms need to be used so that the personal computer and portable form of computers and so forth can be able to convey a message from your office to other offices that you don't have to travel to. Remember, in the old times, you won't be able to send a letter using a digital means or electronics. You needed a transportation to carry letters to the. Of course, there are people that still deliver letters, but it's only because they want to remain in business. Most of them, most cases, we can access letters online. So using the telephone very, this is quick because you reach the person very, very, very in a fast or quick manner, because it can make people in a long distance situation to understand or to access or to be able to engage with them at a very uh, quick means. So using emails is something that I just said. You can use the internet, the web, or the website. Using reports, these are reports that you can compile to communicate What is it that the department has been doing for the past 5 years? Whatever it is. Normally this works when the department is being audited and so forth. Using letters, this one, either you can still use the old way or you can use technology to write letters. Very, very easy way to deal with today's world. So these are some of the things that this unit was all about. So that's it for now until we meet again in unit 8, which will be the last unit of this module, which I believe might be a live class, so that all students will be required